Our next speaker is Professor Natasha Martin from the University of California, San Diego, and she probably has a long introduction, but it means that my phone, which has just sort of gone away, hasn't got it. So I'm just going to say, done lots of work in the sector for yonks. Great work in the sector doing mathematical modelling. Over to you, Natasha.
Great, thank you, Margaret. So you'll notice that the title of my talk is actually slightly different than was in the program. I think that reflects the iterative nature of this work that I actually wanted to talk about today. So I'll be talking about improving housing first substance use services to prevent HIV and hepatitis C among people who inject drugs. It was a community-based participatory modeling study, so I'm here to present it on behalf of my co-authors and co-project directors, Tara Stamas-Busig of the Harm Reduction Coalition San Diego, and Monica Atchison and Zayda Weldon at DAP Health. So this was really a teamwork. I'll talk about it. It sort of originates within a policy center, and this is our policy group, so I wanted to acknowledge them as well. So as I mentioned, this work falls within the California Center for HIV Syndemic Policy Research. What we are is a policy center that focuses on rapid, short-term research projects to really quickly address issues in a dynamic policy environment. So these are very short, from project conceptualization to disseminated research project. It's within 6 months. One key focus of our policy center is that we are a community academic collaborative. We use a community academic collaborative policy research approach. The aim is to address the needs of HIV syndemic frontline organizations across 4 of the 8 priority ending the HIV epidemic jurisdictions in California, highlighted in red on this figure, and those are the 4 organizations that we work with. So we undertake this 5-step policy research process. We have a very flat leadership structure. We have academics, we have our community-based organizations that we work with, and we work together to elicit their priorities and have them prioritize research projects that we kind of pitch. And then together we rapidly co-develop these research projects. We do the research projects, as I mentioned, within 6 months, and then we engage in community-focused disseminations of these findings. And this whole process works actually in continued kind of engagement and collaboration with a broader stakeholder group. So we also work with organizations outside of the 4 I mentioned, as well as people with lived and living experience that provide feedback during this entire process. So this is to show you how we started this. This was our topic elicitation with our community partners, and we just asked them, what research areas or topics are priorities for you? And they raised a range of topics, but the ones I highlighted in red all address housing. So that was clearly a key priority among the people that we worked with. So housing came out as the topic from one of our first elicitation meetings. And so then what we did was we went back and we brainstormed a whole bunch of research projects that we could do related to housing and policy in California. And the one that I came up with was, of course, the modeling one. And I thought, okay, well, we could potentially explore the impact of homelessness on HIV and hepatitis C transmission among people who inject drugs in San Diego County. We could do that because we already had a model developed. It was already calibrated to San Diego County, and within the timelines that we had to kind of do this work, we could use it to explore this issue. So we pitched a whole bunch of projects to our collaborative, and they ranked them. And they ranked our modeling project first, so we moved forward with proceeding with this project. And what we did was we identified 2 key organizations that we partnered with, I mentioned earlier, DAP Health and Harm Reduction Coalition San Diego, to really actually co-create the project from us. I had an idea, but then we worked together. And they were instrumental in actually redefining the entire scope of the project to really address this housing first program issue. Because what they wanted to do was be able to use this work to kind of advocate for funding in this area. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Housing First. So just a bit of background. People who inject drugs face a high burden of homelessness across the nation in the US, as well as in San Diego, where about 70% of people who inject drugs report recent homelessness. And that period of homelessness, we know through systematic reviews, is associated with higher HIV and hepatitis C risk. Now, we have a program in the United States called Housing First. It's a program that provides rapid, permanent housing without requiring sobriety or mental health treatment as a prerequisite for housing. And in addition, one of the core components of the Housing First model should be harm reduction informed services. In 2016, California State actually introduced a bill that required all of the housing programs in the state to adopt a Housing First model. Now, unfortunately, it's not implemented that way. There are counties that have decided to not provide Housing First. And even in counties that do provide Housing First, like in San Diego, very few, if any, operate what we call a high fidelity model, where all of the core components are delivered as intended. And the key component that is most often missing is this harm reduction informed service component of it. Now, there has been some research into this in outcomes among people who use drugs who are accessing these Housing First programs. And this study looked at retention in housing after a person who used drugs actually obtained housing through Housing First programs. And the retention, the two kind of categories of retention are whether the housing program was kind of high fidelity or consistently provided these harm reduction approach services, that's in black, versus programs which inconsistently provided or did not provide them at all, and really kind of low fidelity programs in gray. And so again, what they found is that people who use drugs in high fidelity programs which deliver these harm reduction informed approaches were less likely to be discharged from permanent housing and re-enter homelessness compared to the high fidelity programs. So the hazard ratio was 0.35. So using these data, we reoriented the project scope. And so our new aim together, we decided, was to look at, well, what impact could kind of the existing high levels of homelessness have on HIV and hepatitis C transmission among people who inject drugs? But how could this be addressed and improved through consistently providing a harm reduction informed approach through high fidelity Housing First programs? To answer this question, we use this model, a compartmental model of HIV and hepatitis C transmission among people who inject drugs. The data that we used was primarily from a longitudinal cohort study of people who inject drugs in San Diego and across the border in Mexico, the La Frontera cohort led by Stephanie Strathey, who is here today. Some key data, we have very high HCV incidence in that cohort, important HIV prevalence. I mentioned 70% reporting recent homelessness, on average spending about a year homeless in each episode, but many repeated episodes of homelessness as well. We know through the systematic reviews by the University of Bristol team that experiencing homelessness is associated with increased risk of acquiring HIV and hepatitis C. We feed that information into the model with the risks of homelessness. And in discussions with our county health department partners, we were sad to hear that they, felt that although Housing First programs are the standard in San Diego, they were not aware of any that were actually providing these comprehensive wraparound services. So they would classify their own programs as low fidelity. We calibrate the model to a lot of data, longitudinal data on HIV, hepatitis C, homelessness, incarceration, et cetera. So we modeled three scenarios, the sort of status quo, very high levels of homelessness, low fidelity programs in San Diego. We looked at a second scenario of no new homelessness, where we set the entry rate into homelessness at 0 from 2025 onwards. We know this is not realistic, but this helps us understand the potential contribution of homelessness to ongoing transmission. And then we looked at a scenario of a shift from low fidelity model provision now of Housing First to a high fidelity housing implementation, where in that scenario we reduced the dropout rate from permanent housing for people that had obtained housing by 65% based on the data that I showed you earlier. And so this is to show you the model outputs over time. This is homelessness, the proportion of people who inject drugs who are homeless over time, the black being the status quo, about 70% recent homelessness. The red scenario shows what would happen if we shifted to high fidelity Housing First programs, reducing the proportion homeless to 44% by 2030, and the blue showing, of course, if you stop entry to homelessness, it pretty much goes to 0. We generated model outputs of HCV incidence at the top and HIV incidence at the bottom with these various scenarios. You can see incidence increasing over time, but reduced with these scenarios. I'm actually not going to. This would be what I would show in a typical modeling talk, but I'm not going to show you that, because when we worked on this with our collaborative team and our community partners, they didn't want to see those, or they didn't find those figures very compelling. And so what they wanted to see was something that I'm showing you now. Using simulation modeling, we found that preventing entry into homelessness could prevent 4 out of 20 new hepatitis C infections and 1 out of 20 new HIV infections among people who inject drugs over the next 5 years in San Diego. 2 important things. One, just the, liking to see the visualizations and how we're presenting the proportions, but also actually just the nuance. So when we first presented it, I said homelessness could contribute X number or X percentage of new infections, and there was a strong concern that that could be misused and by the press to kind of say, look, this group is really contributing to infections. We should, this is a problem. So reframing it into if we did better, if we could prevent entry, this could prevent infections was the way they wanted to go and to display this information. And then if all the Housing First programs in San Diego County were to operate at high fidelity, those programs could additionally prevent 647 new hepatitis C infections, 27 new HIV infections across 5 years. And we put this model into an infographic. This is a 1-page infographic, double-sided, front and back. It has key information about substance use, homelessness, HIV and hepatitis C risk, including our modeling results. It is intended to be given to our community partners so they can use it to advocate for funding, and they can take it to policymakers as well as funders. This is translated into English and Spanish, and our co-project directors are actually also doing video briefs to kind of present the information as well, video, TikTok videos, et cetera. So lessons learned, I think this community-based participatory process has been an incredible experience for me. It dramatically kind of adjusted and changed the focus of the work as we went along to really respond to community provider needs and what they wanted to do with the data once we generated it, reframed the results and the dissemination products to maximize impact and prevent unintended harms. Of course, there are a number of limitations to the modeling work. We're only modeling one setting. We did not look at incorporate potential synergistic benefits of this programs on improving OAT uptake, which could further increase impact, number of limitations. But I think important to have done that, and we sadly have work that still needs to be done in next steps. So as we completed this work, in July, President Trump issued the Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets order, which, as you can see, unfortunately said, to the extent permitted by law, the federal government wants to end support for Housing First policies that deprioritize accountability and fail to promote treatment, recovery, and self-sufficiency. So things are not getting better, they are getting worse, and we're hoping to use this model to actually show the potential detrimental impact of these policies. But we also have a lot of other things that are going on, and honestly, when we went through the ranking process, other things came up at the top in terms of priority needs now for the community, and we're facing a number of issues, so hopefully this will be done at some point in the future. Acknowledgement to my many collaborators and colleagues on this work. This work is funded by the California HIV/AIDS Research Program. It is not a federally funded program. It's funded by the state of California. We may have to see more of this research coming from these non-federal initiatives moving forward, sadly. I want to take the last minute that I have just as an individual to just comment. It's been a very hard year. We've heard a lot about it in this conference, but I just wanted to acknowledge the sort of devastating impact that America's policy has had on suspending foreign aid. We have censorship going on. We are not allowed to use specific words. We are not allowed to apply for grants. Our grants are getting screened by, we don't know, potentially AI and things that are deemed inappropriate words. They are not even sent to peer review at the moment in the US. We have a public health system that's getting dismantled, and we have higher education systems that are under attack, where they're freezing federal funding and they are putting conditions on receipt of federal funding that constitutional scholars agree are unconstitutional and would end academic freedom in the United States. So I bring this book to all my conferences now. This is a great book by Timothy Snyder on tyranny. It's mainly just to keep myself motivated and try and remind myself what the rules are. His number one rule was do not obey in advance. His second rule, which I think is the one that we are facing and really need to respond to right now, is to defend our institutions. Our institutions are being dismantled and under attack. For the Americans in the audience and who are listening, please continue to call your representatives. I know it's tiring. It's been going on a long time. We need to keep doing it. Academics, we need to write our university leaders and our faculty associations and demand that they do not not to capitulate to these government demands. And thank you very much for our colleagues for your support, and I'm so deeply sorry if you've been affected by this. Thank you.